What's your reason for not drinking alcohol? Can't handle the hangovers anymore. They now last days. I've started a routine of drinking at least 5 glasses of water and having a bowl of ramen for the salt whenever I drink. Never had hangovers after I started doing that. Edit. After further research, I've found that there's not a lot of evidence to support this method doing much for hangovers. In college, we used to chug beer out of a hollow plastic lawn flamingo with the beak tip cut off and a large hole in its stomach to pour the beer in. Every night that I'd drink, I would come home and fill that flamingo with water and chug it. It was a very powerful hangover prevention device. But now I've been sober for 3 years, and it's quite enjoyable. I grew up around alcohol abuse. Yep, both my parents were alcoholics. I saw what it does to the drinker and the people around them. It's a no for me. My grandparents, both of my aunts, one of which died from liver failure from alcoholism, my uncle, and both of my sisters are alcoholics. My mom has other issues. She is a medication-type addict, and am just raw dogging life. Same alcoholic father here. I have no interest in drinking. I always find it very interesting in some studies that say if kids grow up in an alcoholic substance abuse home, they too have a higher chance of developing those habits and or marry other abusers. However, from my personal experience, I never ever want to touch alcohol or be around people that abuse it. I was one of those statistics. Alcohol and heroin addiction. I have 16 years off the needle, but I still drink. Not nearly as much as I used to, but I know my limits on alcohol. No more jails, no more homelessness, no more stealing or breaking into cars, etc. I'm so much different than I was 20 years ago. Lost all my friends to ODs. I was gifted a second chance. Word, I watched all my closest friends fall victim to and then either die, go to prison, or fall off the face of the earth because of heroin. We all used to do oxys when we could get them, and eventually, it led to heroin. Luckily for me, a little before they all transitioned from oxy to heroin, I had met a rich girl who basically let me do an unorthodox rehab in her house that was far, far away from all the trouble I was getting into. If I didn't have her at that time to shelter me away in her insulated little world, I'd be right there with my old friends, either dead, in prison, or some drifter with no name, scraping by from city to city. That was nearly 25 years ago now, but it still feels like yesterday. Me and that girl never worked out. We stayed together for about 2 years before calling it quits. But not a day goes by where I don't thank God for her and I finding each other at that time. I don't like the taste, I don't like being drunk, I don't like being hungover, and I have better things to spend money on. I am terrified of not being in control of myself. Not in an addict sort of way. I just hate the way people get drunk and do shit without even knowing what's going on. Usually terrible things. I also grew up in a family that didn't really drink. They might have a few beers over the course of many hours, but never in excess and never drunk. It would only be on specific occasions also. Edit. I don't abstain from drinking. I only have 5 to 10 drinks per year. 5 DWIs, and the last one was 0.326. On a Harley, with a gun, it was loaded. On arrest, I resisted. Violently. The legal limit here is 0.08. There is nothing funny about 2 heavily armed, well-trained men in a fistfight, downtown, in a residential area. This did not make me stop drinking, but it was the same year that shit got bad enough for me to stop. My little sister asked me, please stop, while I was in a 45-day stay in intensive care after a car crash I was a passenger in. And even then, when she stood over me while I was in a full body cast, it went like this. Andrew, please stop. With tears in her eyes and mine, all I asked is why. She just said, because I love you. I never drank again. It's been 8 years. Not a drop. Never again. My uncle was drinking his life away after Vietnam. One day, he got out of a cab, stumbled to his apartment building, and fell through the front glass door, sliced open his throat on the way down. The cabbie was still there watching him, jumped out, called 911 from a payphone, and used his shirt to try and stop the bleeding while an ambulance came. Uncle survived and managed to find the cabbie later to thank him for saving his life, and he told my uncle, don't waste it. He quit drinking that day, stayed sober for the rest of his life. I started when I was 14, alcohol and nicotine. It was the typical story, a need to fit in and honestly, a fun time with friends. As the years progressed, it became a norm on weekends. College? Forget about it. Parties every weekend. Game days at a big football school. Turn 21, $2 Tuesdays, Wine Wednesdays, Karaoke Wednesdays, Thirsty Thursday. Of course we have to party on Friday and Saturday, it's the weekend. Sunday is game day, so of course we have to honor it. Well, I loved it. I met girls easier. I had a lot to do in my free time, so much so that I ignored all other obligations. My obligation was drinking. Right before COVID hit, life took a turn fast. I got a Cal before the pandemic broke out. My dad was in the hospital. He's always been sicker, so I moved home to take care of him. Pandemic. Taking care of my father as he goes in and out of the hospital every other month. My aunt at home gets lung cancer. I'm full-time retail to help my family. At this point, I ditched school. Whatever, right? Life is changing fast and I have other priorities. Got a new relationship, an amazing girl. What didn't change was my drinking. I drank more honestly. Fast forward a few years to sum up, dad and aunt get sicker, hospital trips more frequent, working full-time, and the pandemic is basically done, so I go back to school. So, alcohol galore relationship is getting strained. I continue to drink, and then I proceed to black out 4 times a week. Relationship ruined all my money my family needed. Drank up school. Abandoned health. Depressed and anxious. Still blacking out, father. Passed away in my kitchen, with me having to do CPR and failing, even though I just got certified, Aunt Chice getting weaker. That was the last few years, with my dad passing last year. This 2024, full of drinking and terrible mental health, and going broke and making more problems, pushing people away, etc. This story is very abridged, and there's so much I could say about regret, shame, and my mental health overall. I'm 24 and see no future. I regret most of my past. That's abysmal. I have so many friends, and even in their presence, I just black out and cause problems. I can hardly look myself in the eyes. Today, I'm 30 days sober for the first time since 14. I could keep up that life. It might be the shame and regret, or the desire for more, or the desire to not continue to let my mom down. I'm also going into nursing with a burning urge to save someone's life the way I couldn't save my dad's. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons for not drinking. I'm trying to unpack them and face myself now. Yesterday was the 28th anniversary of my last drink. I wouldn't say that I officially had a drinking problem, but I was laying a good foundation for one. I have poor impulse control at the best of times, and it drops to 0 when I am drinking. Basically, once I start, I don't know when to stop. I was dating a pretty special girl at the time. I was at my work Christmas party, and she couldn't make it. I decided that I was going to get plastered and have a good time without her. I went up to the bar and ordered a rye and Coke. I took one sip of it and looked up at the mirror behind the bar. As I looked at my reflection, a voice in my head said, "If you continue down this path, you'll lose her." I grew up with an alcoholic father, and I saw how it destroyed my family. I didn't want to do that to her. I pushed the drink back to the bartender and asked for a Coke instead. I haven't had a drop of alcohol since. BTW, we celebrate our 27th anniversary next year. Dad never drank, thankfully. Mom on a very rare occasion, so it was never around. And my grandfather told me when I turned 21 if I never drank, he would give me $1,000. Well, on my 21st birthday, I went to him looking for the money. He said, "With all the money you save by not drinking, you should have the $1,000 by now, and do you feel like you missed out on anything?" Well, I can honestly say I don't feel like I missed out on anything. Still don't drink to this day. And I can honestly say I would not be at the point I am in life if I had started. On track to R/fire. I'm curious about this. I live in an area where tourism is based on wine and craft beer, and a lot of the local breweries and wineries are putting out non-alcoholic drinks for the sober, curious, or just sober. Do sober people think it's worth their investment? Like, would you travel to wine country and spend a bunch of money to stay at a resort if they offered non-alcoholic options? Think Napa. It's a nice option if you're going with a group of people who do drink. I could see myself enjoying a winery with a non-alcoholic wine and some snacks with my friends. But honestly, if the mocktails are as expensive as the cocktails, I'm just going to stick with water. I buy non-alcoholic drinks because I don't want to have the same conversation about how I'm not drinking 10 times a night. I have to go to a lot of boozy events and dinners for my job, and it's definitely worth the extra money to not derail conversations with my Diet Coke. I consider it a prop. So, there are some people who actually like the taste of wine, beer, and spirits. If you haven't done a tasting menu at a winery or brewery, I recommend it. The food you eat, or whatever you drink, can absolutely enhance the flavors you experience. It was a wild experience at first. but tasting a beer and hating the flavor, then having a bite of a fig cookie, then having the same beer again, but I loved it, was mind-bending. I hit my boyfriend before I got sober, so he was the sweetest person and I evoked emotion from him to a point where it evolved into a panic attack I've never seen. I'll have 2 years. Second attempt, after relapsing during COVID, on the 30th. I keep my sobriety as a way to always remember what violence I'm capable of, and also I do it as a way to truly apologize to him. It is possible, just need a community. I don't like the smell, the taste, what it does to the body, the way people act when they're intoxicated, etc. I also don't see any reason to waste money on it, especially considering I have no interest in it. I'd rather take care of my health, and I can have fun without it. Dehydrates my skin so bad, I have eczema, and I need a proper skin diet, eating full of nutrients like salmon, berries, avocado, dark greens, water, etc. I drink only at weddings or some big party, and that's about it. I hate the way I feel the next day. I figure 5 to 7 times a year I can survive. I'm just over 50 and been drinking, probably for 30 years. I've been married for 12 years and drinking heavy for the last 3 free. However, holding down a jab and a home, my wife and I got a fight and she decided to leave now. I've lost the love of my life and I quit my job, and I'm living off my savings being miserable every day, wondering if I should stay here or not. Once she left, I decided to go to rehab, and I have been clean for 60 days tomorrow. However, she won't answer any calls and has put an order of protection against me, even though I've never touched her, just so I can't call or text or email or send letters. It's really killing me. My daughter's mom used to drink a lot when we were together. Didn't pick up on as she was younger than me, but things slowly started getting out of hand. She got worse from postpartum and mother responsibility, and even did things around our daughter, like being blackout in the bed with our daughter right there. Tried to get her help, but she refused. Stopped buying alcohol for the house because I get it wholesale through work. I felt responsible, like I cause or enable her. Still, I would find empty mini bottles in her car, or would catch her sneaking alcohol in the kitchen. Filed for custody of our daughter, and she got into AA. I went to her first meeting to support her and broke my heart to listen to her say she was an alcoholic, but she showed no emotion and was upset I came. That's when I knew it wasn't real and she wasn't going to change. So I had to be the mature parent, even though I didn't have a problem with alcohol. For the love of my daughter, vowed to never drink again. Dad was an alcoholic during my teen years. Saw him lose his job and a lot of other things. Long story short, I took part in Dry January to somewhat support his efforts in becoming sober and to prove to myself that I could stop if I wanted to. For me, a month turned into a year turned into 7 or 8 or more. I've lost count at this point. I stay sober because I have seen what it does to the people I love most. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. On the flip side, I'm now proud of my dad and how far he's come. He's done a lot of growing as a person. He's sober, runs the very AA groups that helped him, has his job back and life together. The family dynamics aren't the same, largely due to his divorce. That tends to fuck with it. But we speak regularly, and he sees my son. Can't ask for much more. It's not all sunshine and daisies, but we're doing all right. I used to be a functional alcoholic who drank 1/5 of vodka and a couple of beers daily. I was trapped in a prison. I knew I could die if I tried to stop drinking without medical intervention. But I was afraid of what my friends, family, and co-workers would think. My alcoholism took place behind closed doors. I was closeted about it as I lived alone. So I would drink each day at home, hidden behind my closed door, to stave off the shakes and anxiety that would get progressively worse throughout the day. I'd feel a bit of relief, a bit of euphoria, then pass out and wake up feeling unwell again, only to repeat the daily cycle. I don't know what broke inside me, but sometime after Thanksgiving last year, I got sick and tired of being sick and tired. I hit my breaking point and informed my family of my alcoholism and intention to seek treatment. They urged me to discuss this with my employer, but I was terrified. One day in early December, I had a particularly hard day. Anxious from the time I woke up, trembling beginning in the early afternoon. And I finally worked up the courage to disclose to HR that I had a problem with alcohol and that I needed help. I left for treatment on December 11th, 2023, and haven't picked up a drink since, nor have I had the urge to. I can honestly say that every aspect of my life is better now that I am sober. I recently celebrated 1 year of sobriety and I couldn't be happier. If any part of my story hit home, or if you've been thinking about seeking help, I'd urge you to do so. You are not alone, and you do not have to suffer alone. There are people just like you who, with the help of others, became freed from the shackles of addiction. And you can be freed from it as well. My grandfather was an alcoholic who got sober when my mom was in high school. The weekend before I left for college, we had a family dinner with my grandparents at their country club. When leaving, they had some reason why we needed to go back to their house, and my grandfather had time go in his antique car as a going-away treat. This was his excuse for us to have some time alone. We got to a stop sign, and I looked over to see him crying. My grandfather didn't show emotion much beyond happiness and love. I'd never seen him angry or upset. When I asked if he was okay, he apologized to me. He said that because he is an alcoholic, I'm more likely to struggle with alcohol. He blamed himself for what could happen when I started to drink. It broke my heart. I wouldn't be the person I am today without him, and the realization that he saw himself as a burden in my life hurt my soul. I decided that day that I will never get drunk. I will never have more than 2 drinks in a night, and I will never be a daily drinker. That was 19 years ago, and I've kept that promise. He's been gone for over a decade, but I still think about him every day. I just hope that he is proud of me, and he sees that having him as my grandfather is not a burden, but a blessing. I, like many other Asians, have an allergic reaction to it. Some others are fine, while some just get really red and hot. I get that flushed reaction, plus I feel really nauseous after like 1.5 shots LOL. It's similar to being lactose. I'm deficient in an enzyme that metabolizes acetaldehyde, which is what alcohol is broken down into. All that acetaldehyde gets really toxic for the body, leading to feeling like shit. I'm prone to acute pancreatitis that morphine can barely cut through. It's the result of years in an extremely abusive relationship where alcohol was used as a salve, an emotional lubricant, a vehicle for control, a reason to be thrown around and insulted, a way to always be discredited. I drank before then, but it became obsessive. Mostly by his hand, and often because I didn't want to feel anything anymore. My body physically ached from the stress. My soul, I inner myself as a person, dashed out like an errant flame for somehow being offensive and wretched every moment of the day. It became a crutch, but it was also a stick to be beaten with. I still drink very occasionally, but very carefully, and only in safe situations around emotionally stable people that I trust, like family. My father was a mean, functional alcoholic. He drank between a 6-pack plus 2 nips and an 18-rack plus 2 nips every day, usually between 5 p.m. and midnight. He was verbally and emotionally abusive to my mom and I, but would yell at my mom every night, usually about dinner or housework, between 5 and 7, while drinking his 6-pack. We usually had dinner around 7, and the night would go one of 2 ways, 50-50. 1, he'd watch TV Land Nick at night until 9, expecting complete silence in the house. Or 2, he'd keep on drinking until he began to blast blues music as loud as possible, until 12 or 1 in the morning. Often he'd pass out on the kitchen table and leave the music on until I could sneak down and turn it off. It was hell. But remarkably, the dude would get up a few hours later at 4 a.m. and go to work, no matter what. I was begging my mom for as long as I could remember to leave my dad, but she said she loved him. She made me promise that I would never drink like him and didn't want me to drink at all, so I've respected her wishes and kept my promise. Because I come from a family of alcoholics. My dad luckily was able to stop when I was about 6 years old and hasn't touched an alcoholic drink in over 20 years, but apparently it used to be real bad. My oldest brother is currently an alcoholic, and he's usually just an asshole and super obnoxious and is just a dick to everyone. And then I have this uncle who got 2 divorces because of his alcohol and weed abuse, and he tried suing my dad for no reason at all and has been sent to prison multiple times. And I just don't want to be like that. Addiction runs in my family. My mom was an alcoholic and used to be the living shit out of me. Ended up in the hospital multiple times. Destroyed my life and our family. Her drunk driving caused a car accident and I got brain damage. Took me 3 years to learn how to take care of myself into this day. There's a lot of things I can't do, including most jobs that require me to do any kind of training at all. Nor can I go back to school, which I was forced out of after the accident. Literally ruined my life. I hated that sluggish feeling I'd get hours later. I started to not drink as much, and then one day, it was like I just stopped having a taste for it. I like to still have a drink every so often socially, but not habitually. Like I did every day on my way home from work, followed by a 6-pack and maybe some shots depending on the day at home. Ah, damn, I loved cracking open a Tall Boy Road soda on my way home, lol. I like to say I didn't quit like I had a problem. I just stopped. Thank you for watching. Write comments, put likes. Do not forget to watch other videos.